And a happy Friday evening to everybody out there. This is Pucks from the Pine Tree Pod. I'm your host, Benjamin Kennedy. Really appreciate you all being with me again tonight. A beautiful Friday evening up here in the Portland, Maine area. Great way to end the work week. Hope everybody had just a lovely, lovely week out there. I'm looking forward to this weekend, catching up with a couple of friends here this weekend and have my kiddo's first T-ball game tomorrow morning. We are playing the Royals, so that should be a whole lot of fun. Hoping the weather can hold out. Of course, we've got a lot of playoff hockey to talk about, some series to go through, a couple series in the bag. So the conference final starting to come into shape a little bit here. We're going to talk a little bit about coaching rumors and some different things that are going on out there. And we're going to talk a little ECHL, but the schedules are out for the 25-26 season. So let's dive in. We're going to talk about we're going to start here with Carolina Hurricanes winning their series 4-1 against the Washington Capitals. This is a Carolina team I basically picked against the entire year. I had one thing right about the playoffs going back to August. I had five out of the Atlantic. I didn't have the right five. And the one that I picked over Carolina getting in was Detroit. I actually had Carolina out of the playoffs. I picked against them in the first round. I picked against them in the second round. So, to Rod Brindamore, to the Carolina Hurricanes fans out there, I am sorry how wrong I have been on this team. Going back to last year, I just thought some of the losses they had from their roster were finally going to catch up to them, continue to question their ability to score. But man, they just continue to be a tough, tough team to play against. Tough goaltending, tough defense, and enough scoring to obviously get by. When you look at this series, though, it was that smothering defense that they play that was really the difference in this whole series. Between that and a healthy Frederick Anderson, they give you very little time and space out there. They do a great job of not caving in at center ice. They don't give center ice away. Nothing comes easy when you play this Carolina team. And despite some of the losses they've had, the collective continues to play really well. There's a culture there. There's a system there, and yeah, it may not always be optically the best, product on television, but I don't think Brenda Moore and the Carolina Hurricanes care at all about that. They're winning games back to a conference final. So congrats to the Carolina Hurricanes. Through 10 games during the playoffs, they're only giving up 1.8 goals per game. Phenomenal. Phenomenal. And the series, of course I did pick Washington, but in other ways it did go kind of how I thought. A low shot, low event, low scoring type of series. Between both teams, only 22 goals scored, an average of 4.4 goals per game. So fairly low goal scoring there. Again, expected that. Carolina, of course, just doing just enough, right, to get by here. But something I noted early in this series, and something that I kind of called Washington out on was you got to take a page out of the Carolina playbook. Start getting shots on net. Just start getting quantity of shots. They only averaged 19.4 shots per game through the 5 games, 14 in game one, 20 in game two, and then 21 each of the last 3 games. Not going to get it done. Not when you have a goaltender like Anderson playing the way he is, not against that kind of defense. And their PK, absolutely elite there for Carolina. They are clicking at a 93.3% PK rate through 10 playoff games. Just absolutely phenomenal. I don't care if they play Florida or Toronto. I'm not sure if I'm going to pick against them again. At this point, they've made me look pretty silly, but should be a really, really tough out no matter who they play in the next round. So, congrats to Carolina. Off to, I think this is it the second conference final in the last 3 or 4 years, something like that. So we'll see if they can actually get the job done this year and get to a cup and win a cup. I wouldn't be necessarily sad to see that. I think they have such a great culture there, and um, again, love seeing teams that play that kind of smothering style of defense. Reminds me of some of those. It kind of reminds me of the Boston team back in 2011. How they play defense. I think actually Carolina might even be more smothering than that defense ever was. So Dallas and Winnipeg, of course, we had Game 5 last night in Winnipeg during the whiteout there. And Winnipeg stays alive, man. They stay alive. Dallas up 3-2 in this series. When we look at the game from last night, I just thought defensively Dallas just really they gave the middle ice away far too often, especially in that third period. Their defense just looked. I don't know if they were gassed, if they just weren't, you know, playing very aggressively, or if it was just Winnipeg's forwards being a bit more aggressive. I do want to give credit to Winnipeg there. The last two games, Dallas has played 7 D-men. They've gone with an 11-7 versus a 12-6 set for their lineup. I think probably trying to protect Heiskanen a little bit as he was just coming back, hoping he would be okay. Listen, he logged 18 minutes and 33 seconds last night, so I think he's just fine. You do wonder over these last couple if playing the 11-7 kind of threw the team off a little bit. I'm not sure. And you do wonder if they don't go back to more of that 12 forward, 6 defenseman for the next game. Yeah, that first goal last night was a tough one. It was kind of the lucky bounces off the 55s, right? Both 55s on this one. Scheifele looking to pass across ice, kind of in front of the net, and goes off Thomas Harley's foot. And you could just see Harley's just face go like this. And he looks back at Ottinger, and you can see him apologize, like couldn't get his stick down in time to bat it away. Listen, you play the right way, you get lucky bounces, right? Winnipeg certainly did that in this one. Um, and yeah, when you look at Dallas, struggled in this game to get shots. They do end up, I think, with 22 on the night, but I think after two periods, they were still in single digits. So we've we've been a little hard on Winnipeg's defense in the series. I think they've really kind of left Hellebuck out to try a little bit, but last night they definitely locked it in, dialed it in a little bit, and kept themselves alive. I do want to go back to the 5-on-3 that was created in that third period. I think Winnipeg was up 1-0. Um, was that really a penalty on Petrovic against Appleton? Was that legit? I remember I was watching it on mute. I didn't have the volume on, but I was watching that, and it did look to me like Appleton, tripped over the net, the base of the net more than Petrovic's stick. Not sure. Either way, if you're Dallas, you're at this point trying to kill a penalty, and if you're Lundell, you simply can't do what happens next. You can't take a desperate low percentage play with your stick and try to get it on Velarde behind the net. You end up tripping Velarde. Absolutely legit call there, and the ref has to call it, right? There's no way they can't call that one. I just thought that was a fairly irresponsible play by Dallas, and they got to clean that up. You can't go on 5-on-3 in the playoffs. I mean, again, obvious statement. Um, but yeah, Hellebuck, man. I mean, all full value credit to Hellebuck. He has just been lights out, certainly at home. Certainly at home. Shutouts each of the last two games. Has only faced a total of 43 shots. So I do think he's obviously sharper at home. We know that. The defense has been sharper at home. So it just begs the question, can Winnipeg pack their defense up and play that way down in Dallas and get this thing back to a game seven? I think if they can be a little tighter in front of Hellebuck, keep those lanes cleared, allow him to see the puck, and not allow Dallas to muddy up the front of the net, you might be able to get this thing back to a game seven. Ehlers staying hot, of course, for Winnipeg as well. Through 7 games, he's 7 points, 5 goals, and 2 assists. I think he did was it 2 goals last night. I believe he did. So 30 shots so far as well, shooting at a 16.7 rate. So very, very good there. Good to see a little bit more scoring come out of him. Of course, tomorrow night is Game 6 back in Dallas, 8 p.m. Should be a lot of fun. Of course, we're just down to 2 series. We're only getting a game per night now, so this is where we're at for a while, until we get back to next season. The other series, it's all wrapped up. Of course, Edmonton winning 4 games to 1 versus the Vegas Golden Knights. That series wrapped up a couple nights ago, and this sort of turned into kind of a ho hum sort of series for me. And I just expected a lot more, not only out of this series, but out of Vegas. I really did. And to go back and look at the last couple games and to know that Stuart Skinner was stepping back in net for Edmonton, I mean, I got worried. I was a little bit concerned about that because just the last time you saw him, he didn't look good. He'd been a little up and down this year, and Pickard had kind of outplayed him for that net. But man, he definitely tapped into like last year's version of himself or something because two shutouts over the past two games to close that series out and closing it out. Um, yeah, in Vegas. I mean, they won all three games in Vegas in the series. I think if you're the Golden Knights, you're going to look back on that and be like, we couldn't win a home game, and that's not typical of them. They usually, I think, play pretty well on their home ice. But Skinner facing 47 shots over the past two games. Um, Now I think the real big question, you have a little time if you're Edmonton, what do you do? Do you stick with Skinner in net? Do you keep him there because he's playing so well? Is Pickard ready? Is he healthy? What do you do? Do you end up playing both of them in the next round? Maybe that's what happens here. But good on him. I think really saved himself there. I was just so nervous about it. He just played great and full value, full credit to Stuart for that. I think a big difference though with this Edmonton team even going back, versus last year's team is the forward group. They're just they seem deeper this year. I don't know, but it's not all on McDavid and Draisaitl, and it's just so great to see this team play this way where those two guys don't have to carry the load every single night. They have 9 players with at least 3 goals or more throughout the playoffs. That's awesome. Vander Kane is back. Obviously, he's been a big difference maker to the group. Adam Henrique has found his scoring touch. That's been good to see. And not only are they scoring with more depth this year, I do think they're a more physical group. This has always been a very fast team, high octane offense, things like that. But they're a more physical team this year. Again, Kane brings a little bit of that. Also, Trent Frederick, who came over from Boston, can certainly answer that bell when he needs to. So down their lineup, they've got some bruisers now that you don't want to really screw with maybe as often. Maybe not quite as easy to go into the boards or not as easy to take, middle ice, in the ozone. So overall, better depth scoring, better physicality, more depth there. I think big time differences for this Edmonton team, especially in this matchup with Vegas. And for the Golden Knights, you look at how they've built their team defensively. They're big, they fairly physical. Haig is 6'6". You got Hannafin at 6'3". McNabb is 6'4". Petrangelo 6'3". Theodore and Whiteclub both 6'2". That's a big, kind of heavier group. And while they're bigger, man, they just appeared to get skated off the ice by Edmonton in this series. Like they could not keep up with Edmonton's forwards. And I think it's something the Oilers figured out as this series went on. I think after those first couple games, the Oilers said, "Hey, we can we can actually push the puck on these guys. We don't have to sit back. We can be aggressive offensively, get pucks up and out quick." And they certainly did. And I think it was a big difference in this series. It allowed you to push the offense more, and it took pressure off your goaltending. And I think if Edmonton's going to win a cup this year, that's how they're going to do it. Because listen, as much as Skinner played great in the last two games, Pickard's been all right. If you put them in bad positions, especially in a cup final, I'm not sure if there'll be the guys that can carry you there. But if your offense can play like that and push the narrative, I think you could be all right. Um, Now, for the Golden Knights, I think the offseason is going to be very interesting, right? They're a couple years out now from winning the Stanley Cup. How do you retool this thing? What do you do? You have a steady core, but maybe you need a few tweaks this summer. And that's certainly a topic of conversation we will tackle as we get into the summer season. Last series, and of course, this series picks up again tonight, Florida and Toronto. Man, oh man, Florida up 3-2. That series heading back to Miami tonight for an 8 p.m. puck drop. The Maple Leafs really blowing this, having been up 2-0 in this series, fully in the driver's seat. And the only word I can come up with right now, guys, is unacceptable. Completely unacceptable if you're the Maple Leafs. All right, fine. You can kind of sort of live with losing 2-0 in Florida in game 4. All right, a home and home series so far. Florida's really tough on their home ice. You get a great game out of Wall. You just couldn't generate anything. You didn't get blown out of the building, but you lose the game. Fine. But to follow that up in your own barn in game 5 and put up that sort of performance, completely unacceptable. I mean, you're down 4-0 after 40 minutes. I mean, the game is just over, with a whole period left to play. I just don't understand how you can play that poorly in this spot if you're Toronto. Listen, I know I'm a Bruins fan. I know how tough Florida can be. I know how it's annoying and smothering their defense can be. I get it. I've witnessed it. I have cried over it as a Bruins fan. Um, but at this point, if you're the Maple Leafs, you know what to expect, right? You know this is a tough team. You should be prepared. You should be ready and understand how you're going to beat these guys. If you're the Leafs, stick to what you do best. I think that'd be my biggest advice going into game six. You're not going to out Florida. I don't care how much you try to hit them. I don't care how much you try to, I don't say you want to take penalties, but play that physical, aggressive style. And I know we've been calling for the Maple Leafs to be more physical, throughout the years, and I think they have been a little bit more this year. But you're not going to out Florida. You're just not. So stop it. Stop trying to out hit them. Stop trying to out penalty them. I guess, for lack of a better word. Don't allow them to drag you into these fights and skirmishes like they have been. Yeah, let's look at a key number here. On the regular season, Toronto averaged 23.9 hits per game. In this series, they're averaging 40.8. So the success and the way you played all year and how you got to where you where you did in the Atlantic Division and into the playoffs, well, Florida's taking you way away from how you typically play. You're going to beat this team, this Florida team, with your skating, with your team speed, and with your top end offense. That's how it's going to happen. It's not going to happen by trying to out hit these guys. Get back to cleaner and quicker entries out of your D zone. Play more around their goaltender, right? Make them defend more. That's the equation that gets you up 2-0 in this series. Don't lose sight of that. Team speed, and just your offense, and yeah, getting those clean. The more you get those clean entries out of your D zone, the quicker you obviously can play. And if you can't hit what you can't catch, right? And if you're Toronto, don't let them catch you. Easier said than done. I get it, but there's a formula for Toronto and how they're going to win this series or how they're going to win Game Six. Not sure if it happens. I think my smart money would be on Florida tonight, and I almost don't think it's going to be close. I really don't. I think the Panthers have kind of, at least from what it seems like, they've kind of taken the will away from Toronto, especially after that Game Five. But maybe they'll prove us wrong. I would love to see a Game Seven in this series. I just think it'd be a lot of fun. We will see what happens, of course. But how do we feel in the Eastern Conference? Carolina, we know, is in. Carolina, Toronto, Carolina, Florida. Both would be interesting matchups, and I think very different matchups, kind of stylistically. So it'll be really fun to see what happens tonight. Of course, the only game on here for the NHL. Moving on to some coaching and GM updates, and this is a little bit of old news. I haven't been on for a couple of days, but Ken Holland has been named the new vice president and general manager of the Los Angeles Kings. Excellent hire. I think this is a best case scenario for the Kings. I would expect some great things to come here. Of course, Holland was part of that Detroit Red Wings organization from 1997 to 2019, part of 4 Stanley Cup championships, and of course, most recently in Edmonton from 2019 to 2024. Did step away, kind of a mutual parting of the ways last June for both he and the Oilers, but of course was one period away from winning another Stanley Cup. So wildly successful guy. Not surprised at all he got another job. There was a little bit of me saying, "Oh, it'd be great if the Bruins could let Sweeney go and bring in Holland." I would have loved that, but I think he'll be a great fit there in LA. And again, like I say, I think you should expect some really good things to come with a team that's already pretty good, pretty darn good roster there. So he's got a good group to work with, a good place to start. So that'll be an interesting team to keep an eye on this summer. And of course, a couple of coaching vacancies off the table now. Philadelphia's got their guy, Rick Tocchet, heading back to Philly, a place where he played parts of 11 NHL seasons. Of course, he has coached in 638 regular season games, 287, 265, and 87 record, 516 winning percentage, 500 in the playoffs through 22 games, 11 wins there. previously coached in Tampa Bay, in Arizona, and of course, most recently in Vancouver. As I say, I think perfect fit for him. I think stylistically, he fits that team and that city. I know we did talk to Boston. Listen, we know Boston wasn't going to match. It's just a little bit like Sully, right? They weren't going to pay like some of these other teams are going to pay for a head coach. Um, so yeah, they had the conversation, but obviously he is off to Philly. I do think if you're a Flyers fan, be a little patient, right? Be patient with this roster, with this team building effort. But I do think there's a lot to be excited about with bringing Tocchet in. Should be a lot of fun to watch. And then, of course, going back to Vancouver, Tocchet's former assistant Adam Foote being named the head coach. First time now head coach for Adam Foote. Of course, he was a long and storied career in the NHL as a defenseman, mostly in Colorado, and been on the bench there as an assistant in Vancouver since middle of the year back in 2022, 2023. So first time, first opportunity for him to run a team. I do like seeing new blood kind of get that opportunity. And I think for Vancouver, having somebody in house should help that overall transition. I know they didn't want to lose Tocchet. It's a little bit of a hot mess up there. Hopefully, Adam Foote can survive it, and hopefully, bring some calm to those Vancouver waters. Let's see what happens. And if you're a Canucks fan, how do you feel about that? I think we know how Philly fans feel about Tocchet, but if you're Vancouver, how do you feel about Adam Foote? You excited? Do you feel like the GM's got to go? Like, how are you feeling today? Leave those comments down below. And of course, that leaves us with four jobs left, gone from 8 to 4. We've got Boston, Pittsburgh, Chicago, and Seattle still left to be filled. Latest rumors right now, Pittsburgh apparently talking to DJ Smith, of course, former head coach of the Ottawa Senators. I guess also Mitch Love, assistant there in Washington, is on their radar too. Of course, the Capitals done for the year. They could lose a couple assistants. I think it's along with Love. I think it's Miller is another one that's being talked about too. So more to come there. I would expect Mitch Love to, if he wants one of these four jobs, I think you might see him behind the bench here real soon. On Chicago, interviewing Jeff Blashill. So Blashill getting a look there. He was, of course, the head coach in Detroit for 7 seasons. I think that's been his only time as a head coach. So that could be an interesting one there to keep an eye on. Of course, Chicago, one of those teams that I kind of thought they'd have this figured out by now. You got, of course, the young kid there in Bedard, but seeing this just a storied franchise be down as long as they have and having such just an awful year, a really bad year too for Bedard. They need somebody that can go in there and develop him, get the right pieces around him. Maybe a Mitch Marner, perhaps. Could we see Mitch Marner out in Chicago next year? That could be something to watch. But now I'm getting off on tangents, which we don't want to go down today. And lastly, a little bit of news around Jay Woodcroft. Of course, when I was last on, the rumors were, hey, he might be heading to Vancouver. Now you're hearing a lot of talk about him in Boston. So we will see, but all sorts of rumors, reports from Connor Ryan from Boston.com. Elliot Friedman's been on this as well. So Woodcroft potentially to Boston. We'll see. Jay Leach and Marco Sturm also appear to still be very strong candidates. I think they've gone down the road quite a ways with Sturm already, if you believe any of the reporting out there. So those might be your three top candidates. If you're Boston, I'd be fine with any of these guys. I think I would feel more excited maybe with a Sturm in particular. Jay Leach, I think he could be an up and comer too. My only problem with Leach is I feel like Boston needs to completely step away from everything from last year. I mean, last year was such a dumpster fire, and I know it wasn't Leach's fault, but I just think the whole house needs to be cleaned out. And we're not going to get the full house cleaned out, but if we can get more of it cleaned out, the better. Bringing in a voice like Marco Sturm, I think would be great. I'm a little bit 50-50 on Woodcroft. I do think he deserves another chance. And I do like the fact that oftentimes when coaches get that second chance to be behind a bench, it often goes better. They take those lessons that they've learned, they apply them, and they're typically better for it. So we'll see. Do we get another coaching hire over the weekend? I'll be curious to see what happens. A little bit of news on the PWHL. Of course, they are in their playoffs. Defending champion Minnesota Frost, they are in the final yet again. They took out Toronto 3-1, and they are waiting the winner of Montreal and Ottawa. Ottawa up in that series 2-1 in their best of five. So Minnesota, I believe, was a wild card team. Ottawa was a wild card team. So you're one game away from both favorites being knocked out of this playoff. Game four of that series is coming up on, actually, it's tonight, 7 o'clock from Ottawa. And game five, if necessary, will be Sunday on the 18th, 7 p.m. from Montreal. So if you are looking for more hockey to watch, again, a great league to check out. And from the ECHL, we do have the 2025-2026 schedules. They are out. They were released this week. Really exciting, always good, especially for myself. My time covering the Mariners, it's always good to take a look at that calendar and that schedule and see what next season's going to look like. For the Maine Mariners, of course, ECHL affiliate of the Boston Bruins, they open the season on October 18th. It's a Friday night down in Worcester, our big rival. Home opener following the next night on the 19th back here in Portland. That will be against Reading. And we're always curious to see what the out division looks like for the team this year. I do think the Mariners will be quite happy with this. We've got Orlando coming up here in February for 3 games. Then you do go to Florida, so they'll get a nice Florida trip in the middle of February from the 11th to the 14th for 3 games. And then they have Bloomington as well. That's on the road, 20th through the 22nd there in February. So 9 games. They're out of division, 63 games in division to make up that 72-game schedule. Now it's an 18 division. Of course, Greensboro joining the division. I kind of thought they would join the South. I was a little surprised to see them land in the North, but how it breaks down for the Mariners, you got 14 games against Worcester, Adirondack, and Trois-Rivières. Of course, very different from the NHL, right? You don't play your divisional opponent more than typically 4 times, but in this league, man, you get a lot of the same team over and over again. You want to talk about hating a team after a 7-game series? Try playing them 14 times in a regular year. Some of these teams really don't like each other by the end of it. You do have 8 games against Norfolk, 6 with Reading, 5 with Wheeling, so that's up from last year, and only 2 with Greensboro, and that is a home series. March 28th and 29th next year. So if you're looking to check out the newest franchise in the ECHL, for you Mariner fans, you'll have that opportunity coming right up in March. And of course, we do have the Kelly Cup is continuing on as well. We are in the conference finals for both the East and the West. In the East, it's the Florida Everblades and the Trois-Rivières Lions. That series gets kicked off on Saturday, the 17th, 7 p.m. up in Trois-Rivières. And out west, you have the Kansas City Mavericks and the Toledo Walleyes. Toledo is up 1-0 in that series. Game 2 is Saturday night, 6 o'clock Central Time from Kansas City. So that is what we have for you all this evening. Thank you so much for watching and listening. If you do like what you're hearing here, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Please enjoy the weekend. Get outside, enjoy some sun, and enjoy all that playoff hockey. And until next time, everybody, be kind, show love, and God bless.